2026 marks a turning point. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool. It's shaping industries, accelerating innovation, and redefining how humans build, create, and solve problems. From engineering and medicine to finance, infrastructure, and everyday life, AI has become one of the most influential forces on the planet. That's why, for 2026, we recognize AI as Techstrong's Person of the Year. Not for what it replaces, but for what it enables. A future built together, humans and machines. Predict 2026. Join us.
Hey everyone, I hope you liked that video. You know, we are one day out from Predict. I forgot for a second, we're live. So this is today, Wednesday, that we're filming this. Tomorrow, Thursday, is Predict. You can still register at predict2026.com. AI is our Person of the Year. I know AI is not a person, but what the heck? If time can make the AI architects their Person of the Year, we can make the AI itself our Person of the Year. More importantly, though, we've got a full spectrum look at 2026 from, I think, the entire Futurum analyst team, each one in their own specialty. I'm in a lot of them. Check it out. I'm not going to beat you over the head, but go to Predict 2026. Also going to announce the DevOps Dozen Award winners. RSA conference is going to be giving us their predictions and look ahead in security. It's a great show. Go check it out. That's my promo. Welcome to Techstrong Gang. Happy Wednesday. We're live again. For those of you who've watched Techstrong Gang before, our gang today is kind of core regulars. We've got our man in the valley, Jon Swartz, our lady in front of the brick wall, Teri Robinson, and of course, the Dean Mike Vizard. Gang, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Mike, beyond Predict being the big news, and you know, of course, it's AI. Everything we talk about seems to be AI. We've got some news out there. Microsoft's doing their share to stem the affordability crisis. What affordability crisis?
So you and I talked about this on a previous show, and you were banging the drum about the fact that people shouldn't have to pay for the electricity that is being consumed by all these AI data centers. So I guess the president heard you and had a chat with Microsoft, and Microsoft stood up and said that they will cover those costs in terms of how much electricity that they are consuming. I haven't heard yet from the rest of the builders of those AI data centers if they would do the same thing. But I sometimes think if I look in some of these small towns, you know, the electric bill for the whole town is a rounding error on some of these AI projects. So what the hell? Why not just pay for everybody's electricity? But what's your take on this, Alan? I mean, you know, is this a moment in time where the president's doing the right thing? What do you say?
Can you say that again? The president heard me? I'm flattered. But look, the devil's in the details here, guys. What does it really mean that Microsoft's going to pay the full cost of AI data centers? And should we be grateful that they're paying their own bills and not shifting it onto us? This sounds like a typical kind of con game. And we know who the con is, right? Let's think about this. Let's think about this. These SOBs are building $1 trillion worth of data centers, running them to charge us to make their profits. And you want me to be grateful, thankful that they're actually paying the costs for it. Yeah. What world are we living in? You know, thank you, sir. May I have another? Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Mike, you're onto something. Here's what we should be saying is, hey, as long as we're building all this infrastructure because of these data centers you're building, it is a goddamn rounding error to cover the cost, at least the municipal costs, if not all of our individual costs too. Throw that onto the pie. What the heck? You're not paying taxes, most of you, for 20 or 30 years because you got all kinds of abatements to build these data centers. We can't regulate them because regulation can only come at the federal level now on AI. It's the least they can do. But devil's in the details. Here's the real issue. Are we talking about Microsoft just paying the ongoing monthly electricity bill, right, that most of us pay every month? What about the CapEx expenditure to build this critical infrastructure to generate these things? In one case with Microsoft, they're taking 3 Mile Island out of mothballs. Are they covering the mothball cost? Well, everyone's grandma will be a little happy to get free mothballs. But, what about the CapEx cost? Is that included, or is just the monthly? I don't see that detail in there. Or are they just covering the CapEx and, not monthly kind of stuff? I'll see it when I believe it. I'm not, kudos to Microsoft for some good PR here and fighting this imaginary affordability crisis that we seem to be talking a lot about for something that's not real. But let's see what happens.
Jon, what is your take here? Is this part of some larger political effort around affordability? Because, well, we've seen them talk about capping credit card fees, and suddenly all these things that they're doing that have nothing to do, allegedly, with an imaginary affordability crisis.
Exactly. So this is all, as you said, I think earlier in the green room, this is all about affordability and playing to the base. So we think about all these data centers and this infrastructure that's being built, and there are places like Texas, Louisiana, the Rust Belt, and the folks are going to be paying higher energy costs, evidently, eventually. So Trump, in a sense, is playing to his base. So he wants it both ways. He wants these companies to build out to massive scale. He doesn't want them to pass on any costs to the consumer. And I think another thing that he's also probably taking into consideration, although I'm not sure he quite understands it, is that none of these places are going to create any jobs. So he's trying to probably figure out a way to save face. And I also want to point out that Microsoft, to be the first company to agree to this, idea, in a sense, Microsoft is the master at mollifying the White House and federal government. After they went through the whole thing with the Department of Justice and Windows back in the day, they have been very, very savvy and played the white knight among tech. So I suspect you're going to start feeling pressure and start seeing announcements from other companies like Meta, OpenAI, Oracle, perhaps, who are going to accede to the same demands that Trump has. One other thing I'm going to mention is this kind of reminds me in a weird way of these sports palaces that are built on the backs of the fans and the residents of areas who pay taxes to help facilitate building of these massive facilities, stadiums, arenas. And it all comes back to the economy, and it's all being played into this, as you said, Mike, this political prism in terms of affordability. And it's all a big kind of power play to show that he cares, that Trump cares about the little person. I think all he really cares about is just getting these massive facilities built.
Well, yeah, and money in his own pocket somehow. I'm just wondering, we certainly are paying a lot of attention to something that's a hoax, this affordability thing, as we tend to do these days. But exactly how does this impact, affordability for anyone? So Microsoft or whoever agrees to pick up the energy costs. Okay, so it won't add any costs to maybe the average citizen in one of these areas, but how does it reduce anything? It doesn't, unless these companies do as Mike says, and they pick up the tab for everybody's energy.
Well, to Alan's point, there's devil is in the details. So I think a lot of the pricing for energy in various states has been tied to demand versus alleged supply. And whenever demand goes up, everybody's bill goes up. So it's not really just your bill per se. And I think they need to kind of look at the way that we actually price the consumption of electricity in the world, because it doesn't align with these data centers. Secondarily, I mean, why not have these guys just build their own grids? I mean, you know, if you're going to go invest in that level, then might as well go build a grid that doesn't use the public grid, because, well, maybe the public grid wasn't designed for this in the first place.
Well, there you go. Take it from Texas. Do your own, right? Your own
You
grid.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go
What could
wrong?
go
What
wrong?
could possibly go wrong?
John, I want to hit on something you said, John, you know, analogizing this to large public works projects that are funded by our tax dollars, such as stadiums and arenas and so forth, hosting the Olympic Games or the NFL draft or something like that. In those cases, there are tangible, measurable revenues thrown off by those venues and those events, right? Pittsburgh is going to host the NFL draft this year in April, I think the 22nd, that weekend. And, you know, they're anticipating it generating hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of revenue for the area in ways of, in terms of hotels and food and other services. Every stadium, right, creates hundreds of jobs, not just the people working building the stadium, but the people who work in the stadium, the shops around the stadium. You know, you go down to LA, and I haven't had a chance to go here yet, but I really want to. I don't know, maybe John, if you have to go down to SoFi Stadium in LA. I mean, that's like a mixed use project where you have all kinds of retail and revenue generating activities going on there every day of the week, 12 months a year. So contrast that with these temples to our AI god, you know, where I think I reported on this last week, a $1.2 billion data center project is going to have 37 full-time jobs. Good paying jobs, $150,000, I think, $1,000 a year jobs, but 37 for a $1.2 billion project. Contrast that to if I spend $1.2 billion on MetLife Stadium where the Giants and Jets play and how much that generates for the surrounding area. It doesn't add up, right? And I think ultimately that's going to be the surprise here, right? All the people, especially in the Rust Belt, clamoring for the return of manufacturing and good paying jobs and projects. You know, once the construction's done and the cranes go away and the hard hats get put back in the shelf, what's going to be, I mean, there'll be, and like I said earlier too, a lot of these projects are getting sweetheart tax abatement deals where they're not going to pay taxes even for a long, you know, much taxes for a very long time on it. What is the, besides the noise, what's the plus?
Yeah, you think about the environmental impact, you think the lack of jobs, you think of the costs. I mean, the distinction, as you rightly point out, Alan, between the public works and something like these data centers, those stadiums were, I mean, the taxpayers usually vote on these types of projects. Here, they really didn't have a choice. And I think in the end result is they're going to have these massive facilities with minimal humans, probably robots, physical AI operating most of the tasks. And they're going to be hit with electricity bills that are much higher. And I think in his inimitable way, Trump waits until the process is already in effect. There's no planning whatsoever. And then somebody taps him on the shoulder and says, hey, you know, our base is going to get really upset when they get hit with these extra costs and they find out there are no jobs. So we got to do something, you know, come up with something. And then they strong arm a tech company into saying, oh yeah, we'll pick up X amount of costs in a kind of vague way to mollify people until they forget. And then they get hit with the higher prices later.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the forget is just keep throwing more stuff at them every day so that they
distract them.
It's the news cycles, right?
Exactly.
By the time this comes through, there's been 5 other news cycle items. So it's just like, it's shock. It's crazy.
Well, I think also they just don't, most people are not, a lot of people don't understand, how energy costs are calculated, how, and they don't understand the paltry number of jobs that are going to be offered. And they're not going to do their own research to find out too. I mean,
those jobs, by the way, are not going to be in whatever remote location that data center is, because we are remotely managing most of those data centers. So
Sure.
the people who are working on that will not be paying taxes in that community. And then secondarily, though, there is an old joke in IT circles, one of my favorites, what's the future of the data center? It's one guy and a dog, and the dog is there to keep him from touching anything.
Absolutely. But there's another aspect I want to just close with. We could pay more money for energy, but where is that energy coming from? Right? It's Trump Media merged with a fusion company. That doesn't mean fusion is going to be powering these data centers anytime soon. The fact of the matter is our greenhouse gas emission for the first time in years is now going up instead of down.
Yeah.
We are already burning more fossil fuels and dirty energy than we were before. And our greenhouse gases are reflecting it. And so, just because we're willing to pay for that energy doesn't mean that energy doesn't have yet an additional cost. Well, we may not know that because the EPA is not allowed to talk about health
anymore. No.
Right, health anymore, the quality of our air affecting how many people die. But make no mistake, unless we get serious about clean, renewable energy, all of these, we can't power these, or do something with clean nuclear. The only other alternative is go start burning coal again or something.
Well, isn't that on the deck?
We can go to wind power. I know Trump would really like that.
Well, yeah, we'll kill all those birds. Anyway, hey, we got to I hate using that word transition. It gets people upset. Not me. But anyway, we've got to move on to our next segment here. So a new Taiwan trade deal. I've heard this story before, Mike. I don't know. Is this a deja vu?
A little bit, but basically the Trump administration is also announcing that they're going to do a deal that caps the tariffs on Taiwanese exports so that at the very least they are similar to what everybody else did. But the folks at TSMC are committing to building additional fabs here in the United States. John, I know you've been covering this whole space closely, but how significant is all this in the end of the day for our national security or economy? What's your take?
Sounds like a kind of an expedient trade on a political basis, like our last segment. I mean, in a sense, the idea is to reduce the tariffs on Taiwanese goods from about 20% to 15%, which is in line with what Japan and South Korea are paying. And in exchange, TSMC is going to commit to building, I think, 4 additional chip manufacturing plants in Arizona. They already have 6 there. This would be an incredible financial commitment if it does happen. And I always say if, because we look back on this and look forward, they're going to be like 1,000 different variations of what happens in this situation. So by the end, we'll never know. But they're going to devote tens of billions of dollars evidently to build out in exchange for the lower tariff percentages. And again, it's deja vu, right? All over again from the last segment. Again, it on paper, this is what they're talking about. National security be damned, evidently, until they decide to put a Band-Aid on the latest crisis. I don't know. The more I look at this infrastructure build out, and it's not going to slow down, by the way. There's a report, I think Global Data came out with a report about AI tailwinds and this idea that investments are going to accelerate even more so this year than we thought. We're going to get to see more of these types of deals, and the devil is in the details. And again, I throw these numbers out, I throw out these percentages. We can do this for every story from now until the end of the year. And they're all going to change, if not if they happen. So that's kind of where I'm saying. I'm very dubious of this whole thing.
You're not alone, John.
Yeah, really.
Alan, let me ask you this though. So at what point is this not in Taiwan's interest? And I'm trying to scratch my head a little bit about it because, well, if we move more production to the US, then at some point the value of Taiwan to us strategically declines, and maybe, you know, when China says they want to take it back, we don't care as much. So I'm trying to sort this out in my head, how this might all play out.
You know, the Taiwanese are crazy like a dragon, to paraphrase. Let's look at what they get here strategically. You like that, John? I like that.
I like that. I love that. Yeah.
What they're getting right now is a reduction in tariffs. And that's what they want. What are they giving right now? A pledge. This sounds like wimpy. I'll gladly pay you for that burger on Tuesday. Right? And, you know, John, I think you mentioned there are 4 TSMC plants in Arizona.
Oh, so they have 6 factories and 2 advanced packaging facilities. The idea is they're going to build 4 more chip manufacturing plants.
But how many? But let me ask you a question. How many chips are they actually making in the U.S. and what kind of chips are they? Because my understanding is the amount of chips they make is not maybe 0 anymore, but it's minuscule. And the kinds of chips they make are 2nd, 3rd, 2, 3 generations old. These are not their good chips. They're giving us, you know, we're making what we used to stamp as made in Japan when I was a kid and then made in China, you know, the lower quality stuff that's 2, 3 generations old. And if you ask them, they'll tell you because we don't have the workforce to work on these 2 nano chips and, you know, the good stuff. And so you could build chips till the cows come home. Get that, cow chips? You could build chips till the cows come home, but if we don't have the workforce and again, these are robotic factories for the most part, but you do need some workers there. If we don't have the know-how and the workers to build cutting-edge chips, you know, what do we, you know, That's not the chip factories or chip fabs we're looking for.
Right.
So good move for Taiwan. They get what they want right now. They promised something dubious in the future. Who knows what that'll be? And even if they promised it, we can't deliver right now anyway.
Well, and what about the security angle?
What an art of the deal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, what about the security angle too on this from a lot of different aspects, but correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't China like targeted Taiwanese chips and quite a bit? Like,
what do you mean by targeting?
Well, state-sponsored attacks, phishing, and whatever, and sort of aimed at their chip making. I mean, I believe that's right. And what kind of guardrails are we looking at here if this does come to pass? You're right. Right now, it's just a pledge, but has this administration thought out anything regarding national security? No?
I doubt that. John, I think you wrote a story too that says the Chinese are getting their own semiconductor equipment together and will be making semiconductors themselves more aggressively on mainland China, I would assume. So at some point, maybe they'll just wake up one morning and go, yeah, well, maybe we don't care about this as much as we used to either.
They may not. They may not. You know, that's interesting that you mentioned, Alan. I think what Alan mentioned about the type of chips that they would make if this ever comes to pass. And these are like nominal second rates. I hate using that phrase, but kind of down the line chips that aren't as advanced as those that we would like to have. So in a sense, I would really love to see, and I'm going to go back to Foxconn. I would really like to see what they end up building, like the size of these facilities and the number of people who are actually employed and what they actually produce, because it's going to be like vaporware. I can just see it. And they made a nice deal. I think they snookered our our chief executive in the office.
At the art
they
of the
really
deal.
did snooker him.
For a guy who prides himself on being, the ultimate deal maker.
Boy, I think they pulled the wool over his eyes.
Yeah.
To your point about that, they may just manufacture in the U.S. the not the latest and greatest generation of processors, but it's treated like a second source for the previous generation. So exactly what they're making and how many things are actually rolling out of those factories remains to be seen.
Yeah.
I want to say something though about the Chinese mainland, People's Republic of China facilities or plans on semiconductor. This is where the U.S. needs to walk a fine line. Because if you totally cut off their access to the cutting edge chips that TSMC is fabbing, a lot of times on American design, right? You cut off the Chinese access to that, they have no choice but to build their own chip design and making capabilities. And in doing so, you know how they are. They'll put a lot of manpower and money behind it, and it may take them a little while, but eventually it'll rival what we see in Taiwan or here in the U.S.
Well, they steal IP too.
And some of it may, and that may be more than poisoning the Taiwanese chips, Teri. It may be more of stealing the plans for them, but you still need that technology versus what we're doing now, where NVIDIA can sell China, what is it, the H200s, right? Of course, there's a 15% cut for the boss, over there for all of the chips they sell to China, but at least it keeps China, it's like heroin. It keeps China on the drugs and maybe not prevents them, but slows down their own efforts to become independent quality chip manufacturers. I think the Chinese are probably too smart, right? They went through the opium wars already. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
John,
I buried the lead. I admit. So these 4 facilities that TSMC says they're going to be building, they're going to be completed sometime during the 2030s, by the way.
Oh, good, yeah.
Good.
Coming online soon to a theater near you.
No,
But
you had earlier.
But something's clearly up with the mainland Chinese folks, because they're also saying that, at least allegedly, I think, John, you wrote about this, but they're not going to use NVIDIA GPUs. They're telling people not to use NVIDIA GPUs in the latest generation and to use something other than GPUs, which I guess they have more access to. So ultimately, it seems like they got a bigger plan going on here that spans more than Taiwan, because I think they figured out that DeepSeek stuff doesn't need a GPU, so maybe they don't care. I don't know.
That's really, yeah. You know what? And again, that sounds. You're right, Mike. That sounds just like China. They're thinking years in advance, and they actually have a precise plan versus what we have, which is kind of like throw something out there. It's broken. Let's figure out how to fix it after the fact. There's just like no rhyme or reason to what we do.
Talk about checkers versus 3D chess, huh? Okay. Hey, let's move on, because I'm liable to have ice break through the door here any second. We keep talking like this.
Oh no.
Let's move along and talk a little cyber. Mike, what do we got?
Well, yeah, I would just say sometimes we fail to appreciate all the efforts that the cybersecurity folks go through to protect us. And King Charles finally, set an example here where he's highlighting some of the efforts of some of the folks that worked on a particular nasty campaign that was discovered. And also, turns out NASA sent a very friendly thank you note to somebody in Turkey who helped them find some vulnerability in their systems. And Teri, is it me, or is there a little civility entering this whole cybersecurity conversation that might be long overdue?
I'd like to think so. It was kind of refreshing to see some cyber efforts get the nod from some higher ups, right? Like, so King Charles, the person that King Charles gave the honors to, was not a cybersecurity researcher or really a cyber guy per se, but he was more the coordinator and sort of a strategic planner behind disrupting and taking down Lockbit at Operation Cronos or Cronos Operation a couple of years ago, right? And so by all, he's a law enforcement guy by training, but kind of what came out in all of this is how important those people are in the sort of in the back end, right? Who are coordinating all of these massive operations to try to take down, ransomware gangs and whatever. But yeah, he he's not a knight, at this, but he did receive the Order of the British Empire award. I think that's 2 notches down from knighthood. And he was, his name is Gavin Webb, by the way. We should give him his due. And his, he is a lead at the National Crime Agency, which kind of led that whole effort against Cronos. The other one was actually, and this is where I get a little soft here because it was kind of sweet. This young researcher found vulnerabilities at NASA, and through the disclosure program there, reported them in quite detailed reports that he gave. And so he got a letter from NASA, and it says, he was overjoyed, and he said it kind of solidified his career path. Right now, he knows that this is where he wants to be, and he wants to continue to be a cyber defender. And I think that's great. It's kind of tracks with, and he's a young guy, so it kind of tracks with some of the reporting we've done in the past about, I think maybe Mike, you'll recall last week we also had a story on ransomware gangs recruiting teenagers and, whatever. And so a lot of the people that I spoke with were saying, we need a way to funnel these kids into something that's not illegal, right? Take their talents and take their restlessness and whatever. And that's, Casey Ellis at Bug Crowd and Trey Ford were saying, bug bounty programs are a good place for these people to be. So, of course, when this pops up about this young researcher in Turkey, they were all about, this is the way we engage young people and keep them from going to the dark side and keep them on a more straight and narrow but very satisfying path.
Teri, did you say Trey Ford?
Trey Ford. Did I say Trey?
Yeah, I thought you said Trey Ford from Bug Crowd.
Yeah.
So Trey's an old friend. It's good to hear his name. Shout out to
and
Trey
he's
Ford.
popping up quite a bit. He's got a lot to say about some
Always does. Trey's been on top of it. Now, Bug Crowd's, of course, Casey Ellis. I'm my friend Casey, who's down in Australia, but both great guys. Both great guys. Hey, what was the order that the Cronos guy got?
It was called the
Order of the British Empire.
Order of the British Empire.
Hey,
OBE.
better than the participation trophy from FIFA.
Yes, it is.
Otherwise known as an OBE. So that's
OBE.
The OBE. That's right. So he's an OBE, if not a sir. He's an OBE.
Look for our president to be suddenly labeling himself as a security researcher. So
it may be that if he wants to do work here, he may have to turn that award over to the president. Isn't that the MO?
I would be happy to see if we could figure out a way to, maybe we have the Medal of Freedom for citizens, so maybe there's a Medal of Freedom for the security experts. That would be cool.
That would be pretty cool. It would be a little acknowledgement. I'm talking about that in my Shimmy Says tomorrow, about acknowledging some of the great work our security researchers have done over the years. I want to quickly mention NASA, though. Good for NASA to acknowledge this young man from Turkey. In an age where we seem to be shunning public space works and all the noise is about private space, we sometimes forget the groundbreaking work NASA has done at places at JPL and Goddard and places like this, and all of the great science. I was talking to a friend of mine, Todd Vernon, who worked at NASA years and years ago. That was the place where smart people wanted to go work. That was where the smart people in the government were, through the Apollo missions and after. And, it certainly had its trials and tribulations through various administrations. This most recent administration has really cut hard. But it still remains a place where the good guys are, I think, for the most part. They may not be the most efficient spenders of public money, but they dream big dreams.
That's right.
And they do the right thing. So kudos to NASA for having a good vulnerability disclosure system. I'll leave it at that.
No, that's great. And I mean, NASA had always been sort of an enviable place to work too, hadn't it? I mean, people really wanted to work there. This country was really proud of NASA. And yes, they've had some stumbles, like legitimate stumbles, but they've been sort of demonized, as has everybody else, I guess, this last decade or so. But it is good to see them sort of rise above the fray and recognize a young person, who did something good.
Absolutely.
Demonized by somebody who wants to have that money go to some sort of contract from the government that goes to their company. That kind of demonized?
Yeah, that kind of demonized. But
Yeah. Okay. If we don't have anything else, I make a motion to adjourn our Techstrong Gang for today. If we have a second, just following a second, all those in favor? Following a little parliamentary order here, as long as we're talking about King Charles. John, Teri, Mike, thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. We've got Techstrong TV immediately following our live gang today. One more quick plug. Go to predict2026.com. Register for the event. Go check out all of the great future navel-gazing sessions here about so many things tech. You don't want to miss it. But for now, on behalf of Techstrong, thanks for joining. We're out.